was a graduating high school senior when the riots broke out. On the cusp of, getting ready for my freshman year at UC Irvine. And I didn't know, what I wanted to do per se, but I thought maybe I want to go into journalism, and a lot of that was precipitated by the 1992 riots. And had to make a decision on, which UC to go to, and my history professor, or teacher, said, Irvine has a really strong English program. You might want to consider that if you're thinking about going into journalism. And so that's how I ended up at UC Irvine. But, oddly enough, when I got to college, just being so heavily impacted by the 92 riots, I started to actually get involved in student activism, and I started to take courses in ethnic studies, Asian American studies, and really, it opened up a whole world of history and knowledge that I did not get in my K through 12 education. Well, I think for me, when I think about the 1992 LA Riots, SaIGu, it has to be also understood in the context of what was going on. I think many of us know all the various news stories and media stories that were coming out prior to the actual 92 riots, right? We had a series of news coverage, and I think all of us can remember most famously, Latasha Harlins. We remember Rodney King. We remember, the incident, I believe, in New York City. So there were all these, little bits of incidents that I think were being played out for a while and in the background. And then when the verdict happened, then we all know what then happened, which was the riots broke out, and it started out in South LA, as I think we all recall, and then it started to spread in certain pockets of the community within the city of LA, not all. And as a high schooler, who grew up in the city of LA, who grew up in Koreatown. I grew up right on Olympic, off of Olympic and Hoover. I grew up on Eldon Avenue. I went to Hoover Street Elementary School. I went to John Burroughs Junior High Magnet School. I went to John Marshall High School. Counting down my weeks of graduation, and you see, my hometown, my city, in a span of hours that lasted into days, starting to go up in flames. Personally, as when the riots broke, and I remember, I so vividly remember how the skies were orange for days. I mean, it was this thick orange haze that just would not let up on the entire city. And I distinctly remember in watching all the news coverage and feeling like Koreans were being portrayed as, we, instead of the victims, we were the aggressors in many respects, because we were coming into communities and, taking over their businesses and all the sort of rhetoric around that. And I remember feeling like, man, when I go back to school tomorrow, are my friends going to treat me differently? Are they going to look at me differently? There was a part of me that was afraid that my friends, who, by the way, again, a public school, LAUSD, 95% of us are students of color. Huge, API, Latino, it's a huge mix. It's a huge mix. And yet I had this moment of fear. I was afraid, like, what if my friends don't want to hang out with me because they're somehow associating what's being said in the news about Koreans in the Korean American community, and they're making that attribution to me. I think the images of the looting, the images of Korean store owners, the mom and pops who were trying to fend off the looters, but clearly outnumbered and clearly distraught. And you have these, English-speaking white journalists going out there, sticking microphones and cameras in their face and asking them, "Why are you crying?" I mean, I don't know how much more out of touch these journalists were in the way in which they approached much of the victims of the riots. And I think that's really where the frustration on my part came, as a high school teenager, and hence, the motivation at the time, wanting to go into journalism, to be more representative, to be more the voice, to be the voice of the voiceless. The frustration with the media portrayal, literally, it was like a Sunday afternoon, and my cousin and I, we were, at my house and in the backyard, and I said, let's organize a protest. Let's go down to KABC Channel 7 studio and, start picketing, right? We started creating posters in our backyard, like hand marker posters, and I got my cousin and my mom to keep calling Radio Korea, right? Because we wanted a broadcast asking the community, please come to KABC studio. It's on the corner of this Prospect and whatever street it was at this time. Help us to protest. Let's raise our voices about, the unfair media coverage, and knew nothing about the appropriate, steps one needs to take when you're trying to, do a picket line. I'm just a high schooler. What do I know? And so my cousin, though, she successfully got on the radio and put out the call. And the radio, show hosts, they were so gracious to actually encourage the community to show up. And in the meantime, I had my mom call our church priest, because I grew up in a Korean Catholic church, and our priest sent my friends, my high school friends, he immediately got off the phone and he told my high school friends, "You guys need to hurry up and go down to KABC studios and meet Carol, because we're gonna have a protest." The Korean community came through. People were bringing water bottles and kimbap and signs and honking with their kids and coming down. And the crowd got bigger and bigger, and it got to the point where KABC had to send out one of their news reporters to address us. Right. I think their overly simplistic portrayal of this Korean black, racial tension was just overly simplified. It was superficial. The analysis wasn't quite there. Folks feel well, it doesn't really affect my community, but it does, because we're not insulated from the larger fabric, and I think that's really important. And I don't think it breaks through the clutter, and there's a lot of clutter right now in terms of news, in terms of fees, in terms of distractions, and you have to be able to kind of break through the clutter, I think, and try to figure out this whole, I think, the current times, about the travel ban. I know folks in the Korean community might feel well, that doesn't really matter to me because I'm not from those countries that are being designated, but it does, because you look at the history, you look at the pattern of this country. I think we all like to say Statue of Liberty and bring me your poor, but you look at the actual laws and policies on the books, and they have not been friendly always to immigrants and to people of color. And to say somehow that it doesn't matter because the travel ban is somehow not against Koreans is naive. So 25th anniversary, my hope. It's hard to believe, 25 years, because I think so many of us, it's still fresh in many ways. I hope that we continue to be in all sectors, in all industries, being represented. I think the media has certainly come a long way. I think we see it. You know, we have a lot of our proud moments. You know, in Hollywood, whether it's like movies or TV shows, or you know, you even see it amongst journalists. You know, I think you know, there are certainly positives that I think have come out of that, and that heartbreaking moment, I think, for our community. But you know, I'm hoping that we continue to make progress, and we continue to understand that it's not just about us, because as they say, you know, a rising tide raises all boats, and that's how we have to view ourselves. My name is Carol Kim, and this is my SaIGu story.